So thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Sophie Perndl. I'm with the Puni Group, and we're the public engagement consultants for this project. This is our very first online or otherwise open house, and we appreciate everybody participating so early on. It was really important for the development team to host an early engagement meeting that's non-statutory to get you engaged right from the get-go before we really have a plan. And so what we're presenting today isn't as much of a plan as our high-level ideas and the principles we've developed as we develop more details on that plan. And while this meeting is non-statutory, we've been in conversation with Councillor Crawford's office and city staff, and both of them are watching today as well to understand what you're most interested in and to see what we're presenting. So just a reminder that we very much encourage you to fill out our online comment form. That's how we can get a better sense of what's important to you, and it will help us develop our plans moving forward. A few logistical things. We have about a 20-minute presentation that the project team will walk you through. And then we'll go into the Q&A. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation, although we'll only answer once we're in the Q&A part of the presentation, but that will give us a sense of what you're interested in. If you want to ask a question, the Q&A button is at the bottom of your Zoom screen, so just type in your question and that will go directly to us. In terms of this webinar, we most likely will not get to all of your questions in this session, but we will be posting an extensive FAQ on the project website after this. And the webinar itself will also be taped and posted on the project website. So as an introduction to the team that you'll hear from today, Matt Young with Republic Developments and Jeffrey Kimmel with Harlow Capital are representing the development team. Ralph Giannone with Giannone Petricone Associates is our primary project architect. Ian Clark with BA Group is our transportation consultant. Brent Raymond with DTAH is the project landscape architect. And Tony Volpentesta is with Bousfields, our urban planners on the project. He won't be part of the presentation, but he's here to answer your questions as well. So with that, I'll hand it over to Matt. And Matt, you might be muted. Yes, you are.
I knew I'd forget something.
Okay.
Thanks, Sophie, and thank you everybody for joining tonight. This is a bit atypical for us. Normally when we do this on past projects, we would be meeting with you in person and getting to know one another. Obviously, COVID's changed that a little bit, but we do hope through this process and in the coming months and years, we will have those opportunities to start to meet face-to-face and build a bit of a relationship. So I just want to make a quick intro on who we are. So my name is Matt Young. I'm the president of Republic Developments. We're one of the developers, and in partnership with Jeffrey Kimmel and his team at Harlow Capital, we're very excited to start this process with you today. I thought I'd just quickly start by sharing some of the history of this site, because it's kind of had a very long history. So we have approximately 26 acres in this node that's been assembled. And of those 26 acres, about 20 of those acres has kind of gone through a very long development process with the City of Toronto since probably the mid-2000s. And in 2017, it was ultimately approved. And this is the lands along St. Clair Avenue East, where there's a lot of kind of old industrial buildings there. And it was ultimately approved for mixed use and apartment zoning. So it's now been approved for housing. But what happened through that process was, towards the end, there was a realization that the site was more contaminated than it was expected. And what was ultimately approved was never actually viable. So as a result, the site has sort of sat a little bit dormant for years. And through that period of time, other people have looked at the opportunity. And for one reason or another, sort of nothing came to fruition. And then sort of that's where we came along, I guess. And the reality is it's going to take a very ambitious vision for this site to realize an opportunity. And that's sort of where we stepped in. One of the reasons for that is because, you know, I grew up in Scarborough. I grew up not far from here. I went to high school around the corner from here. So I've driven by this site for, you know, decades and know it well. And I always felt there was a great opportunity to do something here up against the GO station. So that's sort of where we stepped in. And we really feel that, you know, Scarborough is long past its time for some exciting vision and an interesting opportunity to come along like this. So we're very excited to start the process with you. It's going to be a long process. There's going to be a lot of discussions. So this is really the first opportunity to share some early thoughts, and nothing at this point is set in stone for us. So we're going to hopefully hear your feedback today, and we're going to start to amend our thinking around what your thinking is. And hopefully we're moving forward with kind of a shared vision for what can happen here. So with that said, I'm going to pass it off to Ralph. Actually, I do want to mention one other thing, that we have really assembled a world-class team on this site. Between Ralph Giannone from Giannone Petricone Associates, who's been involved in amazing master plans across the city, and the whole team of consultants are really the best in class consultants. So we hope you're going to have an opportunity to meet with them. You're going to hear from a number of them today, and this team is going to be the team that takes this through a process. So thank you guys again, and I'll pass it off to Ralph to start the presentation.
Thanks, Pat. I really appreciate everyone joining us this evening. We're really excited about presenting our ideas and gleaning your commentary and your ideas on what we can do here as well. We've been very fortunate, kind of working on the last few months, really kind of understanding this wonderful part of the city. Clearly, it is a very special place. We've been very fortunate. Here I am representing a pretty talented group of consultants that are equally excited about the opportunity here to kind of really see this place as a catalytic opportunity to create a new sense of place for Scarborough. What's really interesting for us, having worked in Scarborough for a number of years now, we really have enjoyed meeting your neighbors in different parts of the city, but as well working with your city representatives as well as city staff on these projects. And really how we start these projects is really to kind of try to create a description of a vision, what we think can happen here that could really create the excitement and really kind of add to the energy about creating this wonderful new place that we intend on creating. So for us, you know, the statement I'd like to read, if you don't mind. Scarborough Junction is a future mixed-use development that will tie together several established neighborhoods, creating a master plan community that leverages an existing transit station and recognizes the potential of this special site to develop its own unique identity. This catalytic new community will provide accessible housing with diverse tenure and much needed retail offering, creating places for people to gather and enjoy. The design will deliver a public realm focus through the formation of streets, squares, and parks, and strong connections to surrounding communities and to the city beyond. And, you know, it's a big project, and clearly, you know, it took some time to kind of put this vision together, but we really think that it kind of describes what we think can kind of steer us as we kind of go through a design exercise. From that big picture, clearly, we want to kind of start focusing more on these guiding principles. And then I'm going to say that this is really kind of the core of this conversation this evening, to kind of go through these principles, making sure that we're kind of focused on the right directions for this community, embracing your neighborhoods in order to inform this new part of the neighborhood. So some of these guiding principles that we are kind of embracing is, the first one, clearly for me, really exciting as an architect, is to design a community with a strong sense of place. A place that is part of your community, that is not something that gets dropped in and is completely foreign, that really leverages this existing neighborhood or neighborhoods that surround this site to create something really unique and special that really fits in perfectly. to be a vehicle for social and economic change, to embrace the social ideas that we think we can imbue on this project, within this project, as well as create wonderful opportunities for economic growth. To create connections to existing communities. Clearly, you know, there's a picture of a GO train. We're right up against the Scarborough GO station. Really exciting to leverage that station, but also really connect to your communities. Right now, the site is a little forlorn, almost like everybody's backing onto it. But we really want to start making new connections that really connect this new community to the existing one. We want to embrace health and wellness. Clearly, very much a kind of appropriate term these days, especially with what we're going through right now. But also kind of looking at it from the macro to the micro level. The macro level clearly being that the site is a dirty site. It's got some actually it's got significant contamination that we want to make healthy. We want to create a healthy landscape for growth. And at every level that we go through when we design everything from built form to open spaces, that we really take health and wellness to heart. We want to reinforce inclusivity and diversity. That's, again, very much something that I personally, as well as all the team members, are very much committed to. Every good place has a great new retail and commercial spaces. Really looking at creating a new focused heart to this existing neighborhood. And that retail could actually spur that kind of idea of connectivity of neighbors. And as well, providing new housing options. It's a wonderful neighborhood. It's got so much surrounding it, wonderful amenities, and we really want to embrace the opportunity for people to live here. So the site context, I don't really have to explain it too much, I'm sure, to most of you, but we have this site that is predominantly, we call it within the triangle, the station, the GO Scarborough station, being at the northeast corner of our site. But we also have these wonderful communities of Birchmount Park, Birchcliff Heights, Cliffside, Cliffcrest, and Scarborough Junction, of course, to the north. And what's been very interesting for us is how this site used to be the center of this community when it was first created. And I guess through kind of growth, the city growing, it became the kind of industrial center up against these railway infrastructure. And now there's a great opportunity that these neighborhoods, which maybe had kind of backed onto this industrial use, can now see it more as a connector of these wonderful neighborhoods that surround it. So what do we have on the site right now? Well, there's a series of buildings of different eras, usually now comprising warehousing, some kind of quasi-commercial spaces fronting St. Clair. There's a sports complex on the west side, but basically kind of, I'm going to say, relatively forlorn. As you know, about 2/3 of the site has been zoned for mixed use and housing. So therefore, it has kind of not seen a lot of love in the last few years. And we're really excited about the opportunity to kind of imbue that. We also have two small components of the site on the, what I call the Danforth Triangle, nestled up against the gas station. So really, we have the opportunity to not only kind of create a wonderful community within the site, but also embrace the Danforth Triangle as a wonderful kind of new front to this, this new neighborhood. Great, so now clearly, as I mentioned, the transportation with this Scarborough GO station is being so important to both this neighborhood as well as this project. We're really excited to pass this on to Ian from BA Group, our traffic engineer.
Thank you, Ralph. As Ralph mentioned, my name is Ian Clark. I'm from BA Group. We're the transportation consulting company brought on by the development group to help understand and address some of the transportation planning and engineering aspects of the site and potential development of the site. I want to first start by briefly discussing some of the key opportunities resulting from potential development of the site, which include utilizing transit as a real travel option, as a real transportation option for people in the area, creating a walkable community that better connects to surrounding neighborhoods, and opportunities to address traffic constraints and accommodate future traffic associated with the site's redevelopment. I want to start by really stressing transit, that any development here would have to be a transit-oriented development focused around Scarborough GO Station and will be well connected to the wider transit network. Connecting to the regional transit network starts with providing a high quality pedestrian connection to your start and end point. And for us, that's Scarborough GO Station. Future development will be organized around Scarborough GO Station and local TTC services. We can't forget those. Integrating development with transit as seamlessly as possible is critical to any success of the development. The proposed development will improve access to Scarborough GO Station for future and existing area residents, employees, and visitors. Scarborough GO Station will provide connectivity to a rapidly expanding regional transit network that includes frequent two-way service on GO trains, on GO train lines servicing Scarborough GO Station. Improvements are being made along the Lakeshore East and Stouffville GO lines in the site area and along the extent of most GO lines to allow all-day two-way electrified train service. Next slide. You can go to the next slide as well, please. Just to speak a bit to the transit reach, Scarborough GO Station provides access to the downtown, to the Line 2 subway, and will provide future connections to the Line 2 subway extension, also known as the Scarborough subway extension, the Eglinton Crosstown, the Ontario Line, Smart Track, and the wider transit network. These investments in the transit network afford people traveling to and from the site significant reach from a transit perspective, specifically connecting to and from the site within a 45-minute span. Next. In terms of pedestrians and cycling, from an active transportation perspective, the proposed development will need to prioritize active and sustainable transportation modes. Firstly, to reduce reliance on single occupant private vehicle use, and also the associated environmental impacts. Quality public realm, a fine-grained pedestrian network, robust collection of cycling facilities, infrastructure, amenities, and focus on safety for vulnerable road users are fundamental to the development of the site. I'll hand the presentation back to Ralph to continue on.
Great, thanks Ian so much. Really excited about presenting this. This is our, I'm going to say, our first doodle about how we think we can kind of look at ordering a site. We really wanted to have Ian speak first because clearly circulation and connectivity is a critical part of setting the framework for creating a new plan. This idea of connecting kind of long, big moves of the GO train, but also that idea of connecting, like Ian said, that active transportation of walking, cycling, coming to an area, connecting to the existing neighborhood, which really doesn't exist right now. So what we see here, again, for us, once these big moves are set, then we can really start making the magic happen to kind of create a plan, to get those elements that are like ingredients in a recipe and place them on the site in a creative and exciting way. So here you see a network of streets. And these streets are highly programmed. I call this the crescent-shaped road is the Highstreet, our little main street, our crescent main street, and a retail square at the heart of what I call the retail district of the site. That basically be the heart of the gathering of this community and the communities that surround us. As well, the other main big move is to create a robust, fulsome park, that a new green space, both for the neighborhood that surrounds us, as well as this existing neighborhood. And this park could also have community amenities that spill out onto it. So there's great opportunity for community amenities to kind of be completely dovetailed into the public realm experience. And as well, we also want to create better connections to go up at the north end at St. Clair, and maybe create a small plaza, kind of transportation plaza. And again, really looking at how all these roads, public spaces, open spaces can really kind of be leveraged to kind of create great connectivity and great focus to the existing neighborhood as well. Now I'd like to pass it on to Brent from DTAH, our landscape architect, who will really take you through this idea, this big idea of public realm and green spaces.
Thank you, Ralph. So just by way of introduction, I am Brent Raymond, a landscape architect with DTAH, and we're really excited to be part of this team. It's an amazing opportunity to breathe life into the spaces that are being thought of here. And we heard Ralph mention sense of place, which is absolutely vital to creating community. And to really make that happen, we need to have a really well-designed public realm. And when we define public realm, we're thinking of the quality and the design of the streets, the parks, and all of the other green spaces that make up the space between buildings. So as Ian had pointed out, walking and biking are the two primary ways that we see people moving about before getting into a car within this neighborhood. You have excellent access to transit. So the quality of those spaces, of the streets and the pathways and the pedestrian routes, have to be inviting, they have to be safe and comfortable. We want people to choose that way. So this is a really strong focus for us. Next. Next slide, please. So the idea of the park, it's not just one type of space. We want opportunities for people to come together and to be alone, to enjoy open space in a solitary way. So social activity, supporting recreation, but providing a lot of flexibility to these spaces. Next. Thank you. We know that food plays a massive part in people's lives, and nothing brings people together like a farmer's market or some kind of food-based celebration. So really trying to think about how we can bring that into the public spaces, whether it's within the park or the retail square, but the opportunity to have programmed elements that start to bring people together and celebrate, whether it's through a farmer's market like this, or the next slide, where you have a music event or some type of other social gathering. We want to design flexibility into these spaces. So it's not just a park, it becomes a series of different rooms that work together. Next. But on top of that, it's not just about groups getting together or lots of activity. We do want to make sure that we offer spaces that people can be somewhat pulled away from the mainstream, that they have those opportunities to escape a little bit and have those quiet moments within the public spaces. So all of this together really provides a rich and varied experience. Thank you. And I'll pass it back to Ralph, I believe.
Thank you so much, Brent. I really appreciate that description. For us as architects, we really almost see what we do as backdrops to that public realm. It really is with this kind of initial focus towards public realm first. That is, I think, at the heart of our approach for this site. The buildings are backdrops to that experience, and they house also another kind of energy, the energy of retail, active uses, as well as people living their private lives, being part of a kind of mixed experience here. And we think that that is really something that is unique to mixed use communities. We're very fortunate to have worked on a number of them in the suburbs of Toronto. We're really excited about this one. Clearly we see here that the type of residential built form we see is a mix of high-rise and mid-rise buildings, but we want to make sure that we create buildings that speak to this neighborhood, your neighborhood. We want to make sure that we're gleaning that kind of spirit that exists in this unique area of Scarborough. And we want to also make sure that we're using high quality materials, similar to the making sure that we're proud of the buildings as much as the community is proud of their own homes that they live in. These buildings will have variety. We want to make sure that that they look like they've been built over time. It doesn't want to look like a project. It wants to look like a real neighborhood that has that patina of a kind of period of time that these buildings would be built in. They're kind of a family of buildings. They're not kind of identical twins. They're more cousins. The idea also is that these ground floor uses will be active, whether they're retail spaces that will spill out onto streets and squares, or even private spaces between buildings that are residentially focused, like these muse spaces that could have residential uses at grade. Clearly at the heart is a retail square, and I have to say I think the square is a unique opportunity here to create a kind of living room for the neighborhood, for your neighborhood, a place for you to meet your neighbors, to gather together in an informal way. And I think that is one of the elements that we think can actually really succeed here. We think that there's a great opportunity to bring new retail to this neighborhood. We know that there's wonderful retail already that exists in this neighborhood, but we think that there's a kind of funny hole that can be filled, and it could be filled in a different way and create a really unique neighborhood-focused retail. This faces clearly the high street, is also, you know, great retail works either on a main street or a square. And we thought that we could bring both here. And we actually even think that the idea of a curving main street is really unique and an element that could actually give this project, this part of Scarborough, a unique persona within the larger city of Toronto as well. So that this high street becomes as well a kind of complement to the square, where you would have wonderful places for spill out of coffee shops, cafes, but also other retail offerings that support this neighborhood. Clearly, we think that there should be a grocery store in this neighborhood. We think that this part of Scarborough actually could afford to have a grocery store. We think that that's going to be a key anchor for the retail offering. But we also think an LCBO, a beer store, and a pharmacy, the kind of elements that make up the best-in-class retail neighborhood that then could be supported by services as well as other unique offerings, but also hospitality uses like the local pub or that wonderful coffee shop or tea shop. Also, you know, there are these opportunities that these large sites can give. And I think one of the elements clearly that complements the built form and the retail and commercial offerings are community amenities. And these sites, because of their large scale, we think, you know, can imbue an idea about community amenities. And these images here just show some of the opportunities that we think could actually happen for community amenities. But clearly we want to hear from you to understand exactly what your needs are, what we think, what you think could be missing and could actually find itself on this site. Places that are active, places of gathering, both intimate places to contemplate, but also places for different ages. Clearly, young families, places for small children. We know that there's going to be a lot of new young families that want to live in this neighborhood, may not be able to afford one of the homes that exists around the site, but we think that bringing those families may also bring opportunities for amenities and infrastructure such as daycares. And then going back to the idea of what I think is really unique about this site, this forlorn industrial site, which is basically a big sea of asphalt with kind of pretty formidable buildings, that we can bring back this idea of green and green gathering, a place for young families to enjoy, to kind of bring back a kind of sense of youthful invigoration to kind of center to the community, but also a place for people that live here, that have lived here for many years, to enjoy, to be able to stay here and age in place is also one of the unique opportunities that we think can actually exist in this new addition to your neighborhood. So we go back to this sketch, we're kind of focusing on it clearly. Again, just to reiterate, the GO train at the kind of diagonal, the entry from our site to the GO station. The large park, basically, we also love the fact that it has this kind of interesting relationship to Natal Park on the south side. So this kind of green lung that is Natal Park can actually double in size with our park. That this park is completely tied into a new curving main street, community amenities, and on the main street our new retail square and improved Danforth triangle. And now I think I'd like to just hand it off to Sophie. Thank you.
Thanks, Ralph. That concludes our presentation. So thanks to Matt, Ralph, Brent, and Ian for that. Next, we'll use the rest of our meeting, so the next approximately half an hour or so, to answer your questions. And we thought we would start off with some of what we had already received before this webinar, and based on what you've sent in, that really largely mirrors some of what our participants are interested in. So are you able to cue the first question that we wanted to address? So yeah, we got some questions from you in advance of this meeting about housing and affordable housing. Do we see affordable housing happening on the site? And what is the difference between that and attainable housing? And I think, Matt, you were going to take that question.
Yeah, thanks, Sophie. So, I mean, the short answer is yes, we do see some affordable housing happening on this site. Any large site in the city today, I think it's important to incorporate that. And we've had experience in the past of doing affordable housing. Some of you will notice on our website, we had mentioned the phrase attainable housing. And we thought that was really important to mention because one thing that's important about this site is that, it's in a place that has not seen a lot of love for a long time. And as a result, there's a level of housing affordability here that doesn't exist in most other parts of Toronto. This part of Scarborough, as an example, our prices are anywhere between 30 and 40% cheaper than they are in downtown. So we believe that 100% of any housing that happens on this site is going to be more attainable housing than you would traditionally see that's coming onto the market today. And we thought that that was a really important message to get across. But yes, we do see affordable housing, which would be subsidized in some form. We certainly see an opportunity for that here. The amount, the type, the size, all of those things are question marks. All of those things will depend on a lot of things like, the amount of density approved on the site and community priorities. So, what's more important? Is it affordable housing or is it another community benefit? And these are the things that we think we're going to really work with you guys on, the rest of the community on, and work with city staff and the councillor's office on through the process to sort of figure out what the right mix is and how to do this effectively. So yeah, so that's our answer.
Okay, great, thanks. Are you able to cue the next question? Oh, sorry, already there. We got a lot of questions from you about retail, and certainly also comments from you about the type of retail that you would like to see. So I'll ask our team to elaborate and see what type of retail would be appropriate here, and how can we ensure that the area will be vibrant year-round. I will pass that on to Ralph. And Ralph, but before I do that, maybe I can slightly elaborate on this question, because we have had a few questions on that come in to us from attendees as well, and ask you to also speak about how that might be juxtaposed with what's on the site today and the type of uses there today.
Okay, well, retail, I mean, we love retail. We love Main Street retail. It really is something that creates a kind of energy that pulls together an entire community. I also want to just mention, I'm here with Carolyn Fearman, who's the team lead, who's been working diligently full-time on this project and clearly understands the project and the neighborhood probably better than I do. So I really appreciate her help here. But I think that right now, it's one of those sites in transition, and it's a site that's been kind of frozen, waiting for something to happen. And a lot of these uses stem from the opportunity for that space that is inexpensive, that is somewhat, I'm going to say, contaminated, and just basically transitional uses kind of that exist in these kind of places, waiting for a change. And we know that the transit, that the city is growing, that the transit is something that is really important to leverage any place that we can. But also we think that these types of neighborhoods kind of can have a kind of boost in the arm. And we think that this project can do that. It has enough scale to kind of create the there, this kind of sense of place that really can become a wonderful new addition to this existing neighborhood. Retail is a key component of any mixed use experience, and its careful manipulation and offering is key to its success. So we want to make sure that we put retail uses that we know will succeed, that we know will be embraced by the existing community as well as the new people that come into the space. We see what the offerings are. We've studied the offerings already that exist within the neighborhood. We know that retail is changing, but one thing that we can all agree on is that, especially in this period that we're going through, that sense of neighborhood has become incredibly important again. And I think that the idea of creating a neighborhood retail focus that is an exterior related focus is actually incredibly appropriate, and I think has longevity and durability at its heart. Clearly, we want to make sure that these uses are going to be used year round. We're going to create spaces that are covered, that there'll be canopies or arcades, that there'll be well maintained, well lit and safe. Eyes on the street is incredibly important. That's one of the key, I think, advantages of a mixed use community where there's people living there 24 hours a day, as well as people coming in visiting to either shop or spend some leisure time in a restaurant or a cafe. This idea of kind of creating a great public realm experience, a park and a square connected by a main street, offers for wonderful opportunities of different kinds of programming. The Christmas markets, the food truck festivals, the yoga in the park, the Christmas tree in the middle of the square. These kind of spaces offer so many opportunities for these kind of experiences. Brent spoke about those food related uses. I mean, what I love about this neighborhood that exists around this site is it has to be one of the most vibrant, eclectic, multicultural neighborhoods that I've seen. It's really, really wonderful to see. And I think that that's one of the key elements that I think a mixed use neighborhood can actually embrace.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Our next question topic is about some of the existing uses on the site, and whether or not this project, how it will impact the existing property and how that might affect the existing tenants and uses. I think some of that we may have already addressed, but I think Matt and Tony, you were going to take that question.
If I can,
I think it was Ralph and Tony might do this one, but
okay.
Look, I think I spoke about it earlier. I mean, how can I say, we're the kind of front edge of change as master plan architects. And you know, one thing that's pretty sure in our world is change is inevitable, and this site is going to change. And it's actually already changed. I mean, in 2017, there was already a zoning bylaw put in place to actually tear most of the buildings down and create a new mixed-use neighborhood. Unfortunately, it was maybe the wrong recipe, I'm going to say, for this site. We think that time that has passed has allowed, I think, a kind of different view, a different lens to look at the project and create a really different approach. As I mentioned, a public realm first approach. And I think that that's something that has changed dramatically, I think, conceptually between then and now. And I'm really excited about that. There might be spots for some of these tenants, but clearly we're really looking to create a best in class neighborhood retail. I mentioned that grocery store, the pharmacy, you know, that pet store, those services that will be serving the community that exists around us and the new community. All these, clearly, this project is really leveraging this significant piece of transit infrastructure that exists right at the footstep of this site. And I think that is clearly gives us, how can I say, a responsibility to leverage that transit to create intensification. Maybe Tony, you might want to add on to that.
Thank you, Ralph. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tony Volpentest. I'm a partner at Bousfields. I'm a planning consultant on this project, and I too am hugely proud of being part of this team and hugely proud of this great opportunity. What has already come up during the presentation, there is a considerable zoning history on this site that started about 15 years ago. But as Ralph was alluding to, there is this great responsibility that goes along with this great opportunity of being this close to transit. And by that, I mean meeting the large obligations imposed on this site to optimize its potential because of its proximity to transit. The existing zoning, which I would argue is old world thinking, largely contemplated replacing what's there today with mostly housing. And our team's current thinking, as is evident by some of the thought process that you've already heard tonight, is much more mixed use in nature. And it's all about replacing what's there today with a true complete community and make it vibrant, animated, with public realm and retail stores and shops. There's a fundamental disconnect between the approval that's already there in place, which again, arguably would be more in line with old world thinking, with what we know and understand leads to the successful development of master plan complete communities. So just to be clear, the existing uses will no longer be there because if this development goes ahead, there are already largely warehouses there in place today. That's always been the case, as is embedded in the existing zoning approval. But we're all ears tonight. We look forward to hearing from you, the neighbors, you, the neighborhood residents, in terms of what you'd like to see incorporated in this development. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that. This is the last prepared question that we have, and I see that some of you are wondering about this as well, wondering about how long the zoning process will take and when construction could potentially start for this project. And Matt, we're going to take this.
Yeah, thanks. So, you know, this isn't always the easiest question to answer because it can vary quite a bit. You know, in our past experience and for other sites that are of a similar nature, the zoning process could take anywhere from 18 months to maybe even 24 months. You know, and ultimately it really depends on, you know, the level of support for the project, the level of support from the community, from city staff and the councilor's office. So there is a range there, but I would say 18 to 24 months is a fair estimate. And in terms of construction start, you know, again, that is even harder to answer because it sort of depends on the zoning answer. But I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that, you know, within, let's say 24 months from the date of zoning approval, you could probably see the first shovels in the ground. Usually after you zone a site, there's a process of marketing and, you know, developing the product and putting that out there. So there's usually a bit of lag in between zoning approval and construction start, but I'd say 24 months is a fair estimate there as well. So we might be looking at up to 48 months before construction could really start here. So there is a long way to go, and this is really the start of the road. But we're excited to start with you, and you know, we do think there's a great opportunity, and so far we've seen a healthy amount of support, at least on the Facebook posts and things like that. So.
Okay, great. I'll just add to that to reiterate that this is our very first open house, so very first opportunity to hear from you. But throughout this process, there'll be many more opportunities for you to give your feedback. So this input from our initial open house will factor into an application for a master plan that will be made, and then we anticipate meetings with the community, and hopefully it will be at a point where we'll be able to see some of you in person, but we'll see. So that completes the questions that our team had anticipated based what's been submitted. So perhaps, Carolyn, I'm going to stop this presentation for now so everybody can actually see the fact that we made an effort and put on collared shirts. It's pretty rare for everybody these days. So I'll go to some of the questions that everyone has sent in, and we really appreciate you participating with us like this. One of the questions that have been submitted a few times was about the level of contamination on the site and what that might mean for development and how that might have factored into previous development decisions. So Matt, did you want to answer that? I think Brent may have a sense of the history of that site as well, but I will let you guys duke it out.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that one. So, without, I'm not a environmental engineer or scientist, but there is a substantial amount of contamination on the site from some of the past uses on the site. A lot of it's volatile organic compounds and things of that nature. It's ultimately not, it's nothing that isn't solvable. The issue is what it costs to solve. And, I think the issue with the original plan that was conceived on this site back in the early 2000s that was ultimately approved in 2017, it was being thought of from a different era really in kind of the mid 2000s of what was possible here. And, it was a much smaller scale. And as a result, just economically, it was impossible to build because the cost to clean up the site was too high. So, the world has changed a lot since then. We're dealing with the housing crisis in the city of Toronto now. So with greater intensification, it creates more, more ability to be able to solve that contamination problem. So, but that's something I'm happy to get into further down the process and get into some of the more specifics about, the history of the site and what's there and how it will be solved. This is also something we're still working through. It's still very early days for us. So we're still sort of working through some of the answers on how to solve that. And a lot of that comes down to community design, and remediation strategies. So these are things that we'll be dealing with for many, many years to come.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matt. Some other questions that we're getting are about the transit infrastructure. Questions about our relationship with Metrolinx and how they might be involved in this process, capacity on the GO lines, and anything else that may have an impact on, that the project may have an impact on. And sorry, let me just add one more comment about whether or not the GO station may be relocated. Ian, I think that's a question for you.
Just before Ian jumps in,
Yeah.
I'll speak to just one part of that, which is,
Yeah.
Have we had any communication with Metrolinx? Yeah, we've reached out to Metrolinx. We've had kind of very early conversations with them, but again, it's very early days. So we anticipate they will be a key stakeholder through this process. And we will continue to have ongoing conversations with them, and ultimately we'll see, where the process leads us and what that means. But there hasn't been really much progress from that perspective yet. And maybe Ian can speak to, I guess, the other part of that question.
Yeah, I can speak a bit more to the transit plans for the region, transit plans specifically for Scarborough GO Station. The GO Station itself, there's no plans for it to be relocated. There are plans for a grade separation, a rail grade separation adjacent to the station. And this is actually part of many projects that Metrolinx are pursuing across the region to allow for all-day two-way electrified GO service. So right now, GO trains are still very much oriented downtown in the morning, and then away from downtown in the evening and afternoon periods. You're starting to see that change quite a bit on the Lakeshore East and West lines. Plans are for it to change across most GO lines to allow for frequent two-way service in both directions all day. So the Scarborough Rail Grade Separation Project is just one of many projects that Metrolinx are pursuing to allow this quite a large expansion of GO service. And I think that's important in this context as well, just given what two-way service at this location can do in terms of its connectivity to the site, but also to a growing transit network. It's funny to think of it sometimes, but we're less than a 20-minute GO train ride to Union Station from this site. We're less than 5 minutes to what will be the Kennedy subway station and the terminus of the Eglinton Crosstown. You're also even closer than downtown to other major GO station stations, such as the future East Harbor GO station and connections to the Ontario line.
And I'll just add one more thing. I saw a very specific question about, I guess, the idea that the Scarborough GO station may relocate.
Mm-hmm.
As far as we're aware, and I would think it would be very difficult to do, but I don't think there's any possibility that GO station will be relocating. So I think you can expect that to be there for the rest of time.
Okay, thank you. We did answer one of our initial questions about housing, but we do have some follow-up questions about it that pertains more to the housing mix that we anticipate in tenure and in form. Ralph, is that something you'd like to take? You're muted. Yeah.
Well, right now we're looking at the early stages right now. Clearly, the tenure is not necessarily known. I'm pretty sure, again, not wanting to put words in Matt's mouth, but that we're looking at both rental as well as market condominium ownership. I think that, again, a fulsome representation of housing is also anticipated. Again, we're looking at spaces for young people, young families, mature adults, empty nesters, as well as retirees. So it's a large site that we're really kind of excited that, given its scale, can actually really embrace the whole kind of blanket of housing opportunities. We're also looking potentially even at examining the idea of live-work units, where there might be some commercial uses at grade, owner occupied, and that owner could live above. So there's some really great little things and spots in the plan that really we think could actually create some wonderful opportunities for this existing community as well.
Great. It's sort of a follow-up to that, Ralph, that I might have to give to you as well. Question about the density height of this project that we would anticipate, approximately how many buildings or units, and then whether or not there might be a good example that we're aspiring to. I can say it's really early days for us, and I'll give it to you.
Well, it is really early days. I mean, we've really focused, and I'm being sincere here, on the idea of breaking down that site and connecting that site and adding that layer of public realm to the plan. Really, I think we need to. And Tony mentioned this new way of looking at a site versus the old way. I mean, and it hasn't been that long, personally speaking, but the idea of leading with public realm, creating a great series of roads, streets, squares, and parks. And then the reality is the built form is the backdrop to that. And we're now looking at that right now. I can't deny that we're not going to have tall buildings here. I think Matt touched upon one of the reasons that the previous project didn't go ahead was that the cost of the cleanup was just too great. and there's a kind of critical mass that's required to actually clean the site to leverage that transit infrastructure. So as I mentioned in my presentation, and I showed some examples that are not our examples, that we're looking at a complete mix of typologies and scale. But again, very much looking at it to make sure it's sensitively integrated within the existing community. I don't know if that answers the question. But.
No, I think that's good. I think
you mentioned where. I mean, all these sites for me are custom tailored. I'm going to say to the specific sites. We've been very fortunate. I think all the team members that I'm so lucky to be working on this project with have been involved in a number of large-scale redevelopment sites. Our firm has been involved in a former, I mean, literally almost the same size, 26-acre site at the foot of here, Ontario, in Port Credit, the village of Port Credit with the Mississauga. That was a former starch plant. About 2 kilometers west, we were working on a 72-acre refinery site. Very, very, like, makes this one look clean in comparison. Redevelopment that we just got approval for. But I think that every site at the Golden Mile, we're working on actually the former Golden Mile Plaza on the north side at Victoria Park and Eglinton. But really every site has its own energy, its own sense of place. And clearly this one wants to be, I think, the best one that we've created thus far. At least that's what Carolyn keeps telling me. So really excited about this site and this wonderful neighborhood. Truth be told, it really is special.
Mm-hmm. And we're in the process of formulating an application, right? So we truthfully don't have answers to all those details right now, but are working on it. And are looking forward to engaging more once we have more definitive answers to that. Yeah. Okay, I can move on to another question about schools. Whether or not there's been conversations with the school board or what that might look for, school capacity as a result of this project. Matt or anyone else from the team that would want to take this?
That might be a good one for Tony.
Yeah.
We have been looking closely as part of the normal city requirement to file an application would be the completion of a community services and facilities study. As was alluded to in Ralph's presentation of a master plan, we would be looking to create a complete community. We're currently looking at existing schools in the area, all the catchment areas, existing enrollments and capacities, trying to sort out what in the post-pandemic world schools mean and how they will deal with capacity type issues. But as part of the process to formulate a new master plan for this community, the provision of an existing facilities like schools are front and center in terms of our considerations. They're being actively assessed in terms of enrollments and capacities. And we have reached out to the school board seeking the very information that I think the question was directed at. So there's ongoing dialogue between any applicant and both the Toronto District School Board, the Toronto Catholic District School Board, in terms of better understanding existing facilities and their existing enrollments and capacities, and trying to project into the future in terms of what that would look like. Anybody that looks at a development of this scale would also understand that in the fullness of time, there's ample time to adjust catchment areas and facilities, either in a permanent or temporary nature, to react to and respond to development. Those are the types of issues that would be captured in some of the phasing analysis or phasing plan for the overall development in terms of how it would happen. But I wanted to reassure the community that the provision of important community facilities such as schools and other community amenities are not being overlooked. They're actively being assessed, and we are working with both publicly funded school boards.
Okay, thanks for that. Another question that has come in is for us to perhaps elaborate on some of the positive economic impacts that we anticipate this project would have and job opportunities. I think there's a reference on our website to that. So Matt, did you want to talk about some of the thinking around that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll start with the job opportunities one. You know, this one is really important to us, actually. You know, someone who sort of grew up in Scarborough and, you know, learned a lot of, a lot of things I've learned in my life were happening there. So, you know, and I was very lucky and, you know, ended up having great opportunities, you know, but other people aren't so lucky. And we thought there's a great opportunity with this project to be able to pass on knowledge and create opportunities for people, especially in the local community. So there's a couple initiatives we're doing just to start. One of those is an employment pledge by all of our team. So every consultant, every trade, every supplier, designer, anybody who's associated with this project, to work on this project, we're asking them to sign an employment pledge. And what that means is that, you know, if they are hiring, they will do their best to hire somebody from the local or broader Scarborough community. We've partnered with a group called JVS, a nonprofit employment agency who's got, they're tied to the government, and they've got offices in Scarborough and throughout the city, and they're going to be supporting us in that endeavor. So we hope that we're going to be able to create opportunities for people specifically around this project in the community. And then the other thing we're doing is a mentorship pledge. So we're asking all of the team members who are participating, not just today, but through the entire span of this project, to take on one mentor, and it's not forever, but to take on a mentor as part of their participation in the project. That could be a, you know, either a student or a young person, or that could be sort of an older person who, you know, who may be educated from somewhere else, but their credentials don't apply here. And the idea there is to pass on knowledge and create opportunities for people, create connections for people, and do our best to support the community. So that's one thing from sort of the job side. Obviously, from the economic development side, you know, I think it's clear that a project of this scale is going to have a massive economic development, not just on this community, but on Scarborough in general, and frankly, on Toronto. You know, there's a huge amount of, you know, different taxes and community benefits and parkland and all these things that can really help support a neighborhood and a community. And when you have the scale of 26 acres, you can do really, really impressive things. So again, we don't know what that will look like and what that means, but it is something we actually are studying because I think it's important to be looking at that today. So, yeah.
Good. Thanks, Matt. I think we're towards the end of our session, but I will take one last question, and that relates to the types of community amenities that we envision. I can pass that to Ralph. The one thing I can say is that's something we'd love to hear your input on. So please go to the feedback form on the website and let us know what your priorities are on that. Ralph?
I mean, this is, yeah, thanks so much, Sophie. I mean, this is something that a whole bunch of us probably want to kind of jump into, because this is a fun answer, because clearly, as Matt mentioned, it's a large site. It's going to generate lots of opportunity. You know, we know that we're committed, as you can tell, to a fulsome park dedication. We think that bringing that substantial amount of open space to this community, adding on to the existing one that exists south of the tracks, is really, I'm going to say, one of the big moves of our site. Using that then to leverage other amenities. Clearly, I'm pretty sure we're all in agreement that there'll be a daycare facilities. We think that that's clearly needed, and I'm going to say pretty obvious, especially given the world that we're in right now, childcare being kind of at the top of the list of concerns. With regards, it's not dissimilar to the school conversation. There's a study that Tony and his team are undertaking to do a community studies facility study, but notwithstanding that, once you make an application, then it really is a kind of conversation that happens with the city staff, again, the local area councillor, and the community at large. And I think what's really important is that we kind of lob that ball. It's showing you a few images of what we think could happen here, but we really want to hear from the community. And I'm going to say, I'm pretty sure that the councillors, representatives that are on this Zoom call, and city staff are equally interested in hearing what exists in the community that's working, that's great, that could be improved, or what can actually happen on this site that could improve the lives of everyone that surrounds the site. So,
Ralph, if I could just add quickly to that, and thank you for kind of alluding to the study that I'm undertaking. There's no community services and facilities study that could better understand the needs of the community than the community itself, because inevitably there is a gap, or there's got to be the people that understand their own community best are the community residents. They may have a need that could be unique to its own neighborhood. So just like the old world thinking of kind of the site and the surroundings itself, we don't want to also apply old world thinking to the manner in which we identify community needs and facilities themselves. So I would genuinely appreciate any input from the participants in this meeting, either in responses after the end of the meeting itself, in terms of being specific about what it is the community really desires and wants in the way of community services and facilities.
Great, thank you, everyone. I guess to wrap up our session, I can just echo what Tony and Ralph mentioned towards the end, is that this session is really most useful to us if you have the opportunity to give us your feedback. That's why we're here today. So we genuinely hope that this provided good information for you as a jumping off point to give us your feedback, and encourage you very much to go on the website and complete the comment form. If you do have any questions after this session, feel free to email us as well at openhouse@punigroup.com. The email address is on the project website. You can also use the writable form on the website to submit more questions. If you feel that your question, we didn't get to your question today, then we will be posting an FAQ document on the website as well. And again, this session was taped, and this video will be posted on our website. So thanks again for everybody that had an opportunity to join us. And on behalf of the whole team, we really look forward to engaging with you again. And we hope that next time we can do that in person. So thank you very much.